Good afternoon, everybody. It's the Go Digital Western Cape Webinar Wednesdays. Welcome and thank you very much for joining us today. My name is Robert Davids. I'm with the Digital Economy Unit at the Department of Economic Development and Tourism at the Western Cape Government, and I'll be your host for today's session. It's really a pleasure to have all of you here. It's where we are in Cape Town, it's quite chilly, so I hope all of you are cozy and well and ready for a great session that awaits us for the next hour. As you know, today's topic is insights into e-commerce with Mr. D Food and NetFlorist. And also on that note, a warm welcome to our presenters today, Devin Sinclair from who's the head of Mr. D Food, and then also Thalissa Pillay, who's the marketing manager at NetFlorist. So Devin and Thalissa, thank you very much for your time and for joining us as presenters today. We'll get back to you in a couple of minutes. But just before I continue, what we'd like to do is just share a couple of house rules, if I can call it that. And this is purely for the sake of having the webinar series and the webinar itself run quite smoothly and seamlessly during the time that our presenters will be chatting to us. So firstly, I would like to inform you as the audience that this webinar will be recorded, and the reason we do this is so that we are able to upload a copy of the webinar to our website once this is done. That's for two reasons. One, if you would like to reference it in future after you've attended this live session, and then two, also for members of our business community who may not be able to join us today, that they can view it once this has been concluded and uploaded. So secondly, we also kindly request that you mute your devices and turn off video. That's just to allow also for a smooth session, and so that there's no interference during the time that the presenters will be talking to us. The third important note is that we request that you post all your questions in the chat window. The chat window is a function on Teams on your right. We ask you to write or type your questions there. At the end of two presentations, we will be addressing them, and I will moderate that during a Q&A session. Then lastly, for those of you who are active on social media, if you'd like to tweet or share information about the series and the session, please use the hashtag #GoDigitalWesternCape. And you can share that with all your colleagues and friends and associates. So from our side of the Digital Economy Unit, welcome once again to our members of the audience, and thank you for your interest and for your support today. Okay, on that note, we can proceed to our topic for today, insights into e-commerce with Mr. D Food and NetFlorist. So as you know, the nature of business, the nature of the economy under COVID-19 has come under huge pressure, and many new challenges and new difficulties have arose. At the same time, it's also given rise to many new opportunities and many new ideas as to how we can conduct business within this ever-changing environment, within new constraints, within a new context. And as the department, our focus has been very much within the e-commerce sphere and all the opportunities that this presents. So we've had a few webinar sessions touching on various aspects of e-commerce as part of our Go Digital Western Cape series. Today, we're going to focus very specifically on e-commerce within the restaurant and food-related business industry, and then also by Mr. D Food. And then, of course, with NetFlorist, we'll be speaking about their platform from an online flowers and gifting perspective and from that sector. So it's two quite unique brands, two quite unique companies that use very powerful platforms and have been around for many, many years, and have a very strong footprint in the country and beyond. So what we're going to try and do today is look at how Mr. D Food and NetFlorist, how they approach e-commerce, Our speakers, Devin and Thalissa, will speak, of course, from their experience from their respective companies, but also to you as an audience, besides the very sector-specific issues related to the online business world of food and restaurant business and the flowers and gifting. There are also some lessons which can be applied across the e-commerce platform, general principles, general good practices, general opportunities and ideas which will touch across the sectors. So it's going to be a dynamic session and an interesting session. Personally, I think Mr. D Food and NetFlorist are very strong brands, very positive brands. Mr. D Food, of course, food, and food always makes me happy. So that's why, or I always I get a smile when I see Mr. D Food and I think of their brand. NetFlorist, the same thing, also a very positive brand, very strong brand. I also do recall, I'm not sure how things are going at the moment, but for those of you who do know some of the campaigns from NetFlorist, Harold has been around with his Smooches campaign, and also Bra Gift. So maybe Thalissa will say something about Harold and Bra Gift as we go through today's session. But these, besides being really strong and positive brands, behind NetFlorist and behind Mr. D, they are also very powerful platforms where technology is used, and how technology is used to leverage the business opportunities and the market. And it's really where technology and digital business meets really great brands, meets really great concepts. And today we'll hear from Devin and Thalissa about some aspects which they'd like to share with us, which we think can add value to the entire business and SME ecosystem in the Western Cape. So I'm quite excited to see to hear what they have to share with us. And without any further ado, on that note, I'm going to hand over to Devin Sinclair. He's the head of Mr. D Food, as I'd mentioned before, and Devin will be taking us through the first 20 minutes or so of today's session, where after Thalissa will join us. So Devin, thank you very much once again for being open to have this, to present this session as part of the Go Digital Western Cape campaign. It's great to have you on board, and it's great to have Mr. D on board. So if I can hand over to you, then we can get going with your part of the presentation. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Robert. Thanks for the kind introduction. But also thank you to everybody else for giving up their time to listen to us today. Hopefully you'll find some of it useful and interesting. I'm just going to share a presentation here. Great. So Mr. D Food, I start off with the picture of Mr. D Food as an app on the phone, because I think the first thing that's worth mentioning about Mr. D Food is it's an almost entirely app-based business. Nearly 98% of all of our transactions on the Mr. D Food platform happen through an app rather than a website. And I think that's, a first point around e-commerce probably over the last 2 to 3 years, but even more prevalent today is how quickly things have shifted to mobile and to apps, and how important mobile e-commerce is to both e-commerce the world over, but South Africa specifically. If we go a bit broader into Mr. D as a whole, really what's quite interesting about Mr. D is it's a 28-year-old startup. Mr. Delivery has in fact been around since 1992, but there's sort of really two sides to the Mr. Delivery story. I'm sure many of you may be familiar with the days of a menu booklet stuck on a fridge in the home, and you'd pick up the phone and phone a Mr. Delivery branch. That Mr. Delivery branch would in turn phone the restaurant and hope that they answered their phone. They'd send the driver then with a printed piece of paper of what the order might be. And with a bit of luck, the driver would then get to the restaurant, pull up his order pay the restaurant, and then bring the order to the customer. A lot has changed since then. Mr. Delivery was bought by Takealot.com in 2014. And really, we then set on a path to fully digitize the business, to transform it into an app-based e-commerce business. And then we also rebranded it into the sort of look and feel that you see today, as well as with the name Mr. D Food. I think the first thing to sort of just point out, with South Africa's largest and leading online food delivery platform, we operate in all 9 provinces in the country, as well as obviously the Western Cape. We have over 1 million monthly active users of the Mr. D Food app around the country, over 7,000 drivers working for us, 1,600 in the Western Cape. And as it stands at the moment, we have over 1,200 restaurants or independent food outlets operating on the Mr. D Food platform in the Western Cape. The business also works in small operational zones. So I think one of the interesting things that might be unique to Mr. D and food delivery is it's an e-commerce business and a national business and a national app, but it's also an inherently local business because each Mr. D operational zone is sort of a 5 to 10 kilometer circle, to put it simply. And we operate in sort of 16 of these 10 kilometer circles around the Western Cape, and we're continuously looking for new areas to expand them to, where it makes sense in terms of restaurant positioning, customers, etc. And that brings with it some of its own interesting challenges and complexity, because if you think about a traditional e-commerce website, you have one homepage. But in fact, when it comes to Mr. D and each area, every single customer's location determines a slightly different selection of what might be available to them in their local area. And with thousands of restaurants and over 1 million customers, you can imagine the number of permutations that come out together in terms of Mr. D's single homepage being replicated out, tens of thousands and hundreds of thousands times a day, that are actually in fact unique to each customer. I think probably the biggest change between the Mr. Delivery of 1992 and the Mr. D Food of 2020 is the amount of technology and digital that has been applied to all sides of the platform. Whilst obviously customers know and use the customer-facing app, there's a huge amount of technology that drives the logistics behind the execution of the deliveries, as well as a separate app for the drivers. But there is also a whole digital platform that we provide to our restaurant and independent food outlets. So that includes an Android-based device and app for their stores. It also includes a web portal that allows them to track their sales, see their customer ratings, as well as on a limited basis manage some of their menu availability. And I think the important thing that is perhaps sometimes misunderstood is the amount of technology involved in what appears on the surface to be a simple task of delivering a burger or delivering a pizza. Like many things, when you're delivering one pizza to one person, things are easy. When you're delivering tens of thousands of pizzas to tens of thousands of people on a daily basis, the complexity is exponential. And really, food delivery as it exists today in Mr. D Food really would just not be possible without the digital technologies powering it. It wouldn't be possible to execute it at the scale that we do it, nor would it be able to execute at the service levels we do it. So we operate on an average delivery time of customers of just under 34 minutes. And really that comes down to the technology that underpins all the location stuff that I spoke about initially, the personalized restaurant list, but then all of the logistics technology that determines which is the best driver, when to send the driver to the restaurant, and making sure that that driver gets from the restaurant to the customer as fast as possible. So it really is a business and quite a great story for both South Africa and the Western Cape, for that matter, in how a 30-year-old analog business can become a 100% digital and online business, and really in not a very long space of time. So I think that, obviously I've been part of of Mr. D since 2015. It was, in fact, largely my job to execute the story I've just described in transforming the business, and many lessons learned along the way. And one of those early lessons, to go back to my first slide, was how important we felt, at least for this category of e-commerce, how important we felt mobile was. And when we relaunched the new Mr. D Food, in fact, for the first 9 months of the new Mr. D Foods platform, the website was purely just a marketing page, encouraging people to download the app. We have over time obviously built that out, but as I explained, app is still a primary part of the business. So that's obviously a very broad story. We work with over 5,000 restaurant partners and independent food outlets in all 9 provinces. And that ranges from the big franchise brands, the household names of KFC and Nando's, down to many, many thousands of independent restaurants. And increasingly, something that we've added to the platform that was brought on by some necessity of the initial lockdown, are independent food outlets, small independent grocers. And so we've obviously concentrated on food and food delivery, but we have branched out beyond just restaurants. Obviously, as I explained, it is a hyper-local business. So it's very much about point-to-point delivery within a sort of 5 to 10 kilometer area. And restaurants get a maximum delivery distance of 5 kilometers from their stores to customers. But if you're a restaurant owner or an independent food outlet that's on the call and thinking about digital in a broad sense, obviously there's many avenues available to you. I think something that I just wanted to highlight to the audience today is how Mr. D Food provides an immediate entry into e-commerce. By signing up to Mr. D Food, you ultimately can get yourself an e-commerce listing within the Mr. D app within a couple of days, or in a worst case, a couple of weeks. So we do provide you with an immediate online e-commerce listing. It allows you to start click and collect and delivery orders without any costs of setting up or maintaining your own app or website, and certainly no costs or staff involved in setting up a delivery service. And both click and collect and delivery obviously now have become of heightened importance given the various sets of regulations and lockdown levels that we've been through. Reaching new customers, I mean, that's a goal for any new business, in any business, whether it's food or otherwise. And that's obviously something we provide people access to because we have a large user base using the Mr. D Food app already, and we've sort of invested over time in growing that. I think the other thing is obviously your listing on the app and allowing people to order for pick and collect and delivery allows customers to pay contactlessly. So we handle both the costs and the technical complexity of taking card payments, instant EFT, and through our partnership with F&B, we also enable people to pay with eBucks, which would in effect allow a customer to pay, buy things from your restaurant or food outlet using the eBucks points. The other thing is, hyper-local marketing is notoriously quite a difficult thing to do. Large-scale marketing on a radio or a newspaper or a magazine has traditionally always been very expensive, and it's also reaches lots of areas where a restaurant or a food outlet's customers might be. And because Mr. D is effectively a local platform to each individual user, it provides a unique opportunity to give exposure to an outlet to a localized audience on an e-commerce platform. We certainly put a lot of support behind the platform and our partners, and we have dedicated teams that manage a restaurant support hotline, as well as account managers who work with our restaurant partners. And then some of these digital platforms that I explained that restaurants get access to, which allow you to monitor sales and review other data that we feed back. And of course, we spend a lot of time and energy both recruiting, training, and managing a large fleet of drivers. And you get the access to this large driver pool, being able to execute deliveries for your restaurant without the costs and management of having to run your own delivery service. So, really this, as I say, as an entry, and if we think of the broader climate, I think, in the last 2 years, increasingly consumers have moved to mobile and customers have started doing more and more online transacting. The current scenario seems to have accelerated the adoption of online purchasing behavior across the board. And I think the restaurant sector, which we fully acknowledge has been through an extremely difficult time and continues to go through an extremely difficult period, has also now been faced with a situation where their loyal customers who always enjoyed coming to their stores and their outlets have now been forced to only use takeaway or delivery, and only as of in the last 2 weeks been allowed to have their people back in the stores. And so being able to provide your loyal customers with a reliable platform and delivery service so that they can still access the great food made by the many outlets is something that we hope to assist restaurants in during what is a very difficult time. On a broad sort of practical basis, there's some highlights of how does it work. So, once a restaurant signs up with us, we take care of the menu capturing, whether it's a whole menu or just your best sellers. Some restaurants select just to have a smaller number of fast-moving things available for click and collect or delivery. Some people elect to have the entire menu. We provide you with, there's a picture on the right there, what looks and feels a lot like a credit card speed point machine, but in fact it is an Android-based device and runs an Android app, but it is also a printer. So we digitally communicate the orders through to that Android device, and there's an option for that order to print out and can be used, for stock management or cash up, or even just to put it through to a kitchen. That device also allows you to accept or reject the order, as well as indicate an estimated time of how long it will take for that order to be made. That in turn feeds back into our systems for us to determine which driver and when to send to collect the food. We manage the connectivity of that device. The costs and the data, the SIM cards are provided in there. And really it is very much a turn on and accept orders, quite simple process. It's the technology behind the systems that really, I've often talk about to our team as we develop things, is if it seems simple to the customer or to the restaurant, to the driver, no matter how complex it might be on the back end, it should seem simple to the end user. So we try where we can to make things as user-friendly and easy as possible. And I think that's a sort of just a general e-commerce principle that holds true for all types of digital businesses, is that keeping things as simple and easy for the customer or the user is really important to ensure that they have a good experience. It's our job to figure out how to make the complex simple. And that's often one of our greatest challenges, is as things grow and as things get more complicated, how do we ensure we still keep it simple for the user? For the costs, so there's zero joining fee or setup fee to join the Mr. D Food platform. We charge then our partners a nominal monthly subscription, so it ranges between 250 and 400 Rand a month, so it's a small fee. And then really the main way that Mr. D Food makes money is charging a percentage commission on the value of each order. And those commission rates are different, whether it's a delivery order or collect order. But in principle, with the exception of the nominal monthly fee, the model is set up in such a way that Mr. D will only make any sort of money if the restaurant itself or the food outlet itself is making sales. And that's a principle we've always, found very important, is to say, well, we say all of these things of how we can help your business, but we really stand behind it because we'll only actually charge you once the sale's actually been made. We handle all the collection of the cash from customers, and restaurants are paid twice a week net of the commission. And then just obviously very topical to our current scenario, we've also taken care of all of the both health and safety and regulatory compliance around delivery orders. I've spent a lot of time and money both training and equipping our drivers to make sure that they have hand sanitizer, that they all have masks, that they've been trained on social distancing. We've implemented a range of contactless delivery procedures, including the temporary suspension of any handling of cash between customers and drivers in restaurants. And really, we see it as our responsibility to try and facilitate these orders for our partners in the most responsible and compliant way. It's something we take very seriously and is both as important to the restaurant partners that we work with as it is to our customers. And so we will continue to sort of make sure that we have covered all of the required points and that we treat this as seriously as it needs to be. I think all of this does play into a consumer behavior shift. And, I reiterate our sort of understanding and acknowledgement of how difficult a time it has been for the broader hospitality industry. We have seen some shift to more people using delivery than before. Obviously, that has been entirely exacerbated by the regulations of people not being able to participate in a restaurant environment and sit down. But in the long term, we really believe and hope that this isn't a case of one or the other. People will always enjoy going to restaurants and being able to enjoy their favorite locations, but increasingly will also want to access the food that they love in a more convenient fashion, whether it's at work on lunchtime or it's on a Sunday afternoon. And a lot of what we see happening in delivery orders is, although we will see regular spikes on a Friday night, you see a lot of orders happening during the day, during the week, during off-peak times, during the weekend, where people might not have gone to a restaurant itself, but still want to access the food. And that's really part of what we hope Mr. D Food can provide to some of our restaurant partners as well. In the broader sense, as I say, we're an entirely digital business and will continue to be so. Technology really underpins all of what we do. And we hope to be able to help more businesses embrace the power of the technologies that we've built, as well as embrace the digital tools that we have built for some of our partners to help businesses move forward, not just in the current circumstances, but in the future as well. Robert, I'm gonna hand back to you, and then I believe we'll save Q&A till the end.
Yes, thank you very much, Devin. Yes, we will have Q&A at the end, but just before we do a bit of a segue to Thalissa from NetFlorist, I think at the risk of sounding silly, first of all, there were many great takeaways from what you just shared with us, so thank you for that. I think we'll get in some detail later, but one thing which was quite important which you had said was Mr. D's Food, your journey from the beginning, and within the context of what we are talking about, digitization of businesses and how technology meets with business. I think the transition you had made as Mr. D Food from, I think you said 30 years before you really went completely digital, if I heard correctly. That digital wasn't something on the side of your business. It actually allowed a transformation of the entire Mr. D business model. And I think that's really important, because very often I think there's a misconception that digital is something that's done on the side, and it's not necessarily something that can be fully integrated into your entire business model. And I think Mr. D Food provides a perfect example of how those worlds have merged, and then how you just built on those platforms as time went by, and then added value to your clients as things improved. So thank you very much. As I said, we'll take some Q&A a bit later. But with that, we're going to come to our next part of the presentation. So thanks, Devin. Or we can
thank you.
Stop sharing the screen.
We'll
chat in a few minutes again. We are now going to have our second presenter on the webinar today, Thalissa Pillay from NetFlorist, who's the marketing manager there, and she'll be sharing her thoughts and ideas and some perspectives on this topic with us. So with that, Thalissa, are you there? There we go.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. It's great to have you with us today. Thank you very much again for your time. With that, I'll hand over to you.
Okay, awesome. Hi, everyone. As Robert said, I manage marketing for NetFlorist, and today I'm going to walk you through the NetFlorist story, the journey, where NetFlorist has been, where we've gone to, where we're headed. Although I'm not very sure that most people know what the direction is to take. Once with COVID and lockdown and everything that everyone's going through at the moment. I'm hoping to share some of our mistakes, some of the challenges, some quick wins that you'll be able to use as well. And I think, to start off, NetFlorist is not just an e-commerce company. We're a florist, we're a logistics business, we're a technology business. There's so many different aspects to just being a florist, which is what most people perceive us to be, that I'm sure most of you will be able to resonate with that your business is so much more than just what it sounds like. With that being said, this is what NetFlorist looked like back in 1999. I'm not sure how many of you have heard of NetFlorist, hopefully quite a few. But yeah, it was a very, very basic site. It was when the .com era had just begun. NetFlorist began in 1999 as a testing site for macro. Our directors at the time worked for a company called NetActive, and one of their tasks was to set up an e-commerce business for macro. And believe it or not, they actually rejected the concept of where NetFlorist came from. And our directors they're very keen on testing, so they just wanted to leave the site to stay alive for a while and see what happened and where things would go. And that's essentially how NetFlorist came about. So as you can see, the site in 1999, God forbid there was word art. It was very basic. There was a shopping basket. There were about 5 products on the site. I mean, now NetFlorist extends to over 2,500 products. But yeah, it was essentially very, very basic, very functional, because people just needed to learn how to use e-commerce. Like I said, it was planted as a testing site. And then what these guys decided to do was to run a small test. So they emailed a database, and at the time there was no such thing as CPA or Poppy or whatever. So what they were doing was completely legal. And they emailed a whole bunch of people just before Valentine's Day, and suddenly they had an inflow of orders. They had absolutely no idea how to execute, because these were guys that had a technological background and not necessarily a florist background. So they contacted preferred florists in the area, and they said, can we send you all these orders to fulfill? And that's exactly what started happening. It was so bad that these guys were actually running credit card machines in the back end through an actual credit card machine. There was no such thing as PayFast and Peach Payments and the likes of PayU and Ozo and whatever back then. And that's, essentially how things were done back in 1999. It sounds very legal now, but at the time it was all very normal. And then as orders started to come through on a daily basis, they realized the need to grow the supply chain. They teamed up with more florists around the areas, key areas. Obviously, your major metros first, being Johannesburg, being Pretoria, being Durban, and being Cape Town. Up until today, we still work with some of those PFNs, definitely not in the major metro areas, but in the outlying areas. There's a couple that we use still in Port Elizabeth, down in East London. And yeah, that's essentially how we started in the florist industry. Right now, if we count Cape Town, Durban, and Johannesburg, we bought out those florists, brought them in-house to NetFlorist, and that's how essentially our 3 warehouses have now grown. 4, because we've actually got 2 in Johannesburg, 1 in Waterfall that services the greater Johannesburg area as well as Pretoria, and then we've got 1 located in City Deep that services both the east and certain areas of the south as well. And then there was a need for a call center, because suddenly, these orders were coming in, but email wasn't an effective method of communication. So a call center, pretty simple, very small call center was started. I joined NetFlorist back in 2011, and there were about 9 call center agents. As it stands now, call center agents, we've probably got about 50 to 60 of them, and over big occasions, we obviously have to bring in quite a bit more. What was interesting for these guys is once they realized how well the concept was doing, they now needed to grow a database because their email database wasn't sufficient. So back in the day, affiliates were still very widely used. NetFlorist had teamed up with quite a few of them, the banks being the first industry, and then the communication providers, MTN as well. I'll talk a little bit more about that on our next slide. And then Harold, like Robert said, Harold is very well known on radio. He breaks through the clutter very, very well for us. We did have Bra Gift on from about last year, but he seems to have taken a bit of a back seat because not many people put 2 and 2 together that Bra Gift belonged to NetFlorist, and it was so difficult going to presentations like these and meetings because everyone said, "Where's Harold? What have you done? Bring Harold back." So we have brought him back. It's been quite a while. The last that we ran Bra Gift was actually last year, December. There's just something about that. I can't believe I'm going to say this, is very annoying voice that just manages to break through radio so well for us. He's fantastic for our brand. So this is an example of what we were doing with our affiliates, again, back in 1999. The only downside to this is that NetFlorist was not growing its own database, which becomes quite important if you're trying to market to certain people and try and avoid the extra costs that come in with using affiliates and partners as well. Okay, so if we just take it a couple of years forward, we're now sitting in 2011, and this is essentially what the site looked like then. So if you have a look at the top, you'll see the tabs being NetFlorist, NetGifts, NetJewel, and NetPerfume. It became very difficult for people to realize that NetFlorist was so much more than just a florist, where we were a gifting site, a jewelry site, and a perfume site as well. But it seems quite normal that, you don't really want to say you bought an engagement ring off the NetFlorist website, which is why we went ahead and we formed 3 new brands, NetGifts, NetJewel, and NetPerfume, and we had products sitting into each of these sites. So you could quickly navigate between each one. The downside to this is NetFlorist, although it's perceived as a very big brand, it's still a very small business with an extremely small marketing budget. So it became quite expensive for us to put spend into different sister companies, being NetGifts, NetJewel, and NetPerfume. What had initially happened is people actually started thinking that NetGifts, NetJewel, and NetPerfume were competitors to NetFlorist, which is not really what we wanted. So we dissolved both NetGifts and NetPerfume to sit inside of NetFlorist. If you go onto our site now, you'll see, if you click on more, you'll be able to find these gifts there. The point of the pop-up that you're seeing, what's the occasion, we love testing. Everything gets tested at NetFlorist. We A/B test stats, we A/B test the sites, and we were A/B testing to see why people were hitting the site. And once they hit the site, what kind of occasion were they buying for? Now, it seems very difficult to be able to trace what the occasion was, but we set up a very sneaky system that basically scanned card messages to find certain words. Birthday, Verjaarsdag, anniversary, baby, get well. And that's how we kind of knew what majority of those occasions were. We then put a pop-up onto the site to try and get people to navigate very quickly through to the exact occasion that they would want, as opposed to spend endless time browsing through over 2,500 products to find the perfect gift. We also, up until today, we still absolutely love our library. It's called library. It's just a very fancy word for vehicle branding. We love investing in this. It's just moving billboards for us. We've got them in our hub areas in Cape Town, in Durban. We try and keep it quite relevant to each city. So yeah, rocking the daisies is definitely a big one for us in Cape Town, and driving Miss Daisy as well happens to be a very popular one for Cape Town too. With that being said, Rose Rage is our very important vehicle in the Johannesburg area. And then, yeah, so what we did back in 2011 was we launched a whole lot of markets. This is a picture of one of them from Somerset Mall. We had them located in key areas. They were in V&A Waterfront, they were in Sandton, we had some in Gateway. We rolled out very quickly. We opened up 11 stores in a very, very short space of time. Unfortunately, all of them failed, but we've luckily got quite nice learnings from them. First thing is, when you're going to do something, start it small, because if it fails, at least you haven't put in a lot of effort into it and a lot of money. And then you've got to go slowly but fail fast. And that's exactly what happened with NetFlorist markets. We realized that we were not ready for the own consumption game. People still liked picking up own consumption flowers from the likes of your Pick and Pay and your Woolies. As you saw it, you'd quickly pick it up from there. Whereas, we thought that we could perhaps get people to go into the NetFlorist market, ask our florists exactly for what they wanted to be made up, and either take it to a dinner party themselves or to put it into their homes. But yeah, it didn't work out as well as we intended. And then, we just reinvested into our digital business. We are a complete digital website, digital platform. So you cannot go into any of the NetFlorist hubs and ask for your orders to be made up there. Just fast forward to 2020, geez, what a year. So bar the need to pivot very quickly post-lockdown, NetFlorist is still very much a floral and gifting site, as you can see from this is exactly what our site looks like at the moment. When we went into level 5 lockdown, it had a massive impact on our business, the same way it did for Devin and his restaurants. So we quickly decided to list with Fruit Spot, which is a massive fruit and vegetable retailer into the restaurants. And because they were so impacted by the lockdown, they had ample stock that we could pick up from them, and we were then doing same-day deliveries of fruits and vegetables. That's the cool thing about NetFlorist is, before the likes of your restaurant, your online restaurant services, we were the only same-day gifting service or same-day service when it comes to e-commerce in South Africa. It's quite key for e-commerce to be able to leverage that to the best of their ability. There's no point in trying to order from a greengrocer that's going to take 2 days to deliver when your need is now. And that's the same thing with gifting. Most people forget that, oh no, it's my sister's birthday today, I've got to buy a gift. You can quickly go onto the NetFlorist site and we'll deliver in no time. We started selling fresh fruits and vegetables at the start of lockdown, and then we ventured out into groceries about 2 weeks later. It was quite impressive for us from an OpCo level because our business is centered around 6 month to 12 month lead times, and we churned out groceries and fruit and vegetables in a matter of 2 days. And 48 hours. There were lots of learning curves along the way, but it's so important to remember to be a disruptor in the industry that you're in, because if you're not, essentially you're going to be the disrupted, and NetFlorist couldn't really afford that. What I've got on here is both our sites. And when I say both our sites, I mean both sites. We've got a desktop site and a mobile site. Now, most businesses use responsive sites, which means that they've essentially just got one site. We don't. And there's a couple of reasons for that. We feel like if you had to take the analogy of both Facebook and Instagram, with Facebook's geared around check-ins. So you can check into whichever place you're in, post a photo, tag a friend, and that's essentially the main platform on Facebook. If you look at Instagram, when you use Instagram, you're going to be hashtagging everything. You shouldn't be using that same hashtag platform and then sharing it onto Facebook. You should essentially treat each platform as separate in order to get the most amount of efficiency from it. And that's exactly what we've done with our site. So if you try and order a gift off our desktop site and then try and order it off our Mobi site, you'll go through very different approaches. And that's purely because we tried to keep Mobi as simple as we possibly could, bearing in mind that we've got a challenge in that you're not using the same delivery addresses every time you order. It's always going to change because you keep delivering it to different people. Our desktop site is a little bit more user-friendly. You can enter in personalization. You can then preview it. So it's essentially two different experiences that you're having on two very separate platforms. It's much harder to manage this. When the deployment goes live on desktop, we've then got it tested on desktop, and then if it's okay, then we deploy to Mobi as well. From about last year, October, November, our stats suddenly shifted. We went from a desktop first site into a Mobi first site. So as it stands, we get about 60% of our traffic on our Mobi site. and the balance is coming through from desktop. Last year, it was very different. About 70% of our traffic was going through to desktop. Well, if you look at year on year, 70% of that traffic was going through to desktop and about 30% on mobile. Let's move on to the next slide. So just in terms of the back end, or not just looking at a site level, personalization is a massive focus for us at NetFlorist. It seems to be everyone wants their name on a gift. It's growing exponentially for us. It's our biggest growing category on the site. You can have anything personalized, from a baby blanket to a gown to alcohol. It's been quite difficult and challenging to work with certain suppliers, especially the alcohol guys. They don't want us tweaking their CI and that kind of thing. But we've managed to get around that, and we're now personalizing Norway, Jack Daniels, Ferrero Rocher, Lynch. So it's very, very quick growing category for us. We've also got the bakery at NetFlorist, so it kind of seems, birthdays and cakes are just synonymous. It was a no-brainer for us to launch our own bakery in-house. We do everything from dipped strawberries to personalized donuts and the likes. Our journey from 2011 to 2020 in terms of what mediums have worked for us and what mediums haven't. We've used Billboard. We dinged Billboard. We've had an app, and we've now dinged the app. So you've only got our Mobi sites. And the reason behind that is our Mobi site is essentially a replica of our app and vice versa. And our stance is, if you can't get an app to work functionally as Mr. D, then you shouldn't have one at all. You should essentially just use your Mobi site. It also became very expensive for us to manage the app, which is why we said it's cool. We're just gonna stick to our Mobi site. We tried video, YouTube video. It no longer works for us. We tried print catalogs, which again no longer works for us. So as it stands in 2020, we're definitely doing a lot more radio, a lot more of Herald. We've been using Google and the display network quite a bit, especially with the likes of prospecting and remarketing, and then social media, both Facebook and Instagram. I just wanted to show you guys a quick clip of what Billboard looked for us back, what it looked like back for us in 2013.
So, making your loved one or better half feel special has always been a challenge. The bigger, the fancier, the grander, the better. That's why NetFlorist, SA's largest online gifting service, introduced the Grand Gesture. The Grand Gesture allowed everyday South Africans to personalise their billboards with birthday wishes, love notes, and, well, whatever they could dream up. And carnations did they come to the party. Once the message was submitted and approved, the lucky person was made aware of their special gift's location with a delivery from NetFlorist. And then they got to see their Grand Gesture along with thousands travelling the same route, because big love needs a big audience. See? Cuties. The popular voice of Harold, aka moi, promoted the campaign on radio. Anything that's not better when it's bigger is a kidney stone. But believe me, when it comes to love, go big or don't go at all. All you have to do is go to netflorist.co.za, submit your message, and you could have your Grand Gesture on one of our billboards. Blogger drops and social media spread the news. And the results? We slashed the cost of each billboard, so for a small price, they got to go big. We effectively made each NetFlorist outdoor site a potential personalised gift, which in turn increased traffic to netflorist.co.za. Grand, right? The Grand Gesture is now a featured product. And the most impressive result? These two were married with 2 kids, then life got in the way and they got divorced. Shame piece. But after this Grand Gesture, from what I could see, they were all smoochies. And of course, we spread messages of love and some much needed smiles across the city on a grand scale. Smoocher toodles!
Okay, so just challenges that NetFlorist faces. Occasions we grow by over 1,000% over one particular day, like Valentine's Day and like Mother's Day. It's quite difficult for us to bring resources into the business that understand the way things should be done. Never a quick checkout. So you've got to enter in a brand new address every time you're purchasing. You've got to enter in a message on a card. So it's definitely more difficult than recurring orders when you're delivering to the same person. Delivery in itself is an issue. Trying to get something delivered at the same day that it's ordered has its own challenges. While it's still one of our USPs, it's still quite difficult. Not being the recipient of what you're ordering, also a challenge in itself, because you're not really sure what the other person is getting, and you don't want to say, hey, can you please shoot me a picture? Because, you know, then you're kind of taking away the sentiment. So it's quite critical for us to make sure that quality control is always done properly. It's very manageable inside of our hubs, but when we go to outlying areas like in Port Elizabeth and East London, those florists aren't receiving the same stock we are. Sometimes they don't receive stock at all, which makes quality control very difficult for us. Heralding isn't always easy. So, you know, we've kind of Harold's NetFlorist's biggest asset, but to try and get that brand tone right so that he never comes across as cheap or crude, but rather very strategic. There's a very fine line there, and even our agency struggles sometimes, but again, it's one of our USPs. And then the NetFlorist name in itself is a challenge because of the word florist. You forget that we actually do jewelry and perfume and personalized gifting, so it's quite challenging sometimes to just communicate that through to everyone. Just quick wins for other e-commerce businesses. SEO. So we pride ourselves on SEO. We try and rank for everything we possibly can. It's very important for us. If you can, use as much meta information as you possibly can. Your meta information would be your title, your meta description, and try and get ranking on Google. Use the likes of your search console to get your maps listings up. Use Screaming Frog to run crawls to try and determine if there's any issues on your site, if you're coming up with duplicate meta information. SERPFox is a free software as well that will tell you where you're ranking for certain keywords in your business. For us, our main keywords are flower delivery, birthday delivery, anniversary delivery, and the likes. In terms of database, so try and build up a nice database, whether it's email or SMS. We've got 2 emails that we run. We run our promotional emails and then our transactional emails. Our transactional emails you can't actually opt out of because it talks about information about your order. So we try and put in a sneaky banner at the bottom to just try and promote whatever occasion is coming up or a new range. SMS, use that in the event somebody's unsubscribed from emails. Leverage your partners as much as you possibly can through the likes of your affiliates, indirect partnerships, and trade exchanges. Social media, as I said, we're still using and investing in that quite heavily. Facebook does much better for us than Instagram does. Try and use as much organic SEO listings versus paying Google to run prospecting and remarketing campaigns for you. And then when the goings get tough, don't forget your why. Don't forget why you started something. Don't forget that it's whatever is going to be, whatever's going to work is never going to be easy to get off. And with that, I'm going to leave you with a reminder of our why. Things always get tough for us at NetFlorist, especially over a big occasion like Valentine's Day and like Mother's Day. And this video then gets played around and sent around the company just to remind us of what our why really is.
NetFlorist, South Africa's largest floral delivery service, had a challenge. How to get guys to send more flowers more often, not just on anniversaries and birthdays. The solution? Take what our drivers see every single day and show guys how a bunch of flowers makes their wives and girlfriends feel. Introducing Happy Cam from NetFlorist. Hidden cameras that capture those moments. Now, when orders were made, guys could see the power of flowers for themselves. A targeted online campaign directed guys to the NetFlorist site. There they saw a new button. By clicking it when they ordered, they activated the Happy Cam. The reactions of their loved ones were filmed and sent back to the generous fellas. Guys all over South Africa were finally getting what the big deal was with flowers, and they could share these videos with friends and encourage them to order too. Now South African guys know flowers aren't just for special occasions. They make people happy every day.
Cool. Thanks so much, Robert.
Thank you very much, Thalissa, and thanks for sharing the NetFlorist story and some of the challenges that you've had over the past. And also, I was very happy that you did include Harold and Bra Gift, because they are very fun brand ambassadors, I think, to the public. So yes, to both Devin and Thalissa, thanks very much. As I said, we're going to take a few short questions from the audience, and then we're going to wrap up, because I am conscious of our time and I'm conscious of your time. So firstly, I think one comment I would just like to make is that I think both from Mr. D Food and from NetFlorist side, we can see that your transition into digital business and the digital space and all the technological platforms that go together with that is something that has really happened over a period of years. I think very often there's this popular belief, possibly a misconception, that platforms like these get developed by a techie in their garages over a weekend, and then boom, Bob's your uncle. And I think what you've illustrated very clearly is that it's something that does take time. It does take a lot of imagination. It does take a lot of testing, and it does take a particular culture and mindset to test new things and to become aware of new opportunities in the market. So I think that's definitely a lesson that cuts across businesses, whether you're a small business, a medium business, whether you're a big business such as NetFlorist and Mr. D Food. I think those are general principles which do go across the board. So maybe to combine some questions to you with closing comments to Devin and Thalissa. Firstly, to Devin, there was a question where someone in I think Johan in our audience was asking whether Mr. D Food will diversify to include any other product delivery categories in future. That's specifically to Devin. And then to Thalissa, there's a question around whether NetFlorist works with independent suppliers or whether everything is brought in-house. So those are two specific questions. But then in closing, as part of your last comments, perhaps, if you could, once you've answered those, if you could perhaps share what you personally feel or what NetFlorist or Mr. D Food feels are going to be the mega trends that will emerge in the e-commerce space, and what kind of opportunities there would be for SMMEs to either join as partners on your platform to take it up, or to start something on their own. So maybe just some last comments on those, and then we'll wrap up. Devin, if we could start with you first about the first question. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Robert. I mean, to answer the question, so it is something we consider. We have done some diversification in the last sort of 6 to 12 months. We do have a partnership with Checkers where we deliver liquor from their liquor shop stores. And we've recently done a partnership with Rain to deliver SIM cards. We've also done more recently in lockdown partnerships with convenience stores and some independent food outlets and grocers. So these are things we look at. I think the one thing when we do look at this, it's still within the existing model though. And I think the important thing is it's still a point-to-point short delivery. So Mr. D is unlikely to do a delivery from the CBD to Paarl. But if you wanted to deliver something from Frederhoek to Sea Point, that's probably about as far as we operate. So within the, that sort of 5 kilometer constraint, we have considered other alternatives, but we also have our hands full with just managing the restaurant supply that we have and the customer demand for that. So it's a balance of what makes sense within our logistics model, and also what's going to make sense to our customers who primarily still come to us for food. And then just in terms of trends and things going forward, I think the one thing that all digital businesses bring with them is data and the concentration around data and analysis. And I think that's something that as businesses was a trend before, but is probably getting accelerated as e-commerce and digital businesses continue to accelerate. And that's something we see. It's very much how we run the business. And I think more and more businesses will look to have more information, more data, so they can understand more about whether it's an operational statistic or whether it's a consumer behavior. Data is really what underpins all digital businesses. On the food side specifically, with the current sort of change in consumer behavior related to the pandemic, that is potentially going to lead to slightly higher incidence of delivery than may have happened before. And South Africa was quite a long way behind the curve in terms of how much delivery was being done. So there is potential for that to accelerate.
All right, thank you. Thank you very much, Devin. Thalissa, maybe your response and some last comments from your side?
Yes, so just to answer the question about whether we do everything in-house, we definitely don't. We don't grow our own flowers. We do export them and import them as well from other regions within Africa. In terms of making up our own arrangements and our own gifts, that is done in our warehouses in Cape Town, Durban, and both warehouses in Johannesburg. For the outlying areas, we then team up with our preferred florists and use that as our network into those kind of areas. In terms of trends, if you haven't jumped onto the e-commerce bus, especially with what's happening with COVID, definitely jump onto it as soon as you possibly can. I think Mobi transactional is just going to blow up. So if you don't have the right platform on Mobi, invest in that as much as you possibly can. People are shifting from desktop to Mobi, especially with social media and social media advertising. And then in terms of your delivery times, I think people are getting impatient, they're getting scared, so they want deliveries to happen very, very quickly. If not the same day, then maybe even perhaps the same hour. There's no such thing as, waiting for delivery now, waiting a week or 2 weeks, and there's no communication between. So I think definitely focus your efforts on Mobi, focus your efforts on quick deliveries, and definitely lots of communication as well.
All right, great stuff. I think, yes, within this growing on-demand culture as a whole, the world of on-demand business and deliveries are going to just take off over the months to come. I think COVID-19 is probably just accelerating the pace at which this new way of doing business and new way of living is going to happen. But definitely, I think, I agree that's on the cards. So, Devin, and Thalissa, and to NetFlorist, and to Mr. D Food, thank you very, very much for really informative sessions and great presentations. And as I said at the beginning, it's besides the very powerful businesses that you both are, it's also a positive brand. So I'm sitting here with a smile on my face because I'm thinking of many pleasant and happy things. So thank you very much for your time and for prioritizing this webinar. We know you have a lot of other things that's on your plate. So once again, it's been great to have you here. I'll just round off with the last couple of comments from our side, and then we'll wrap up. So thanks, Devin and Thalissa.
Pleasure. Good luck, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
So to our audience members, thank you very much again for your time today and for joining us. I hope you found it informative and that it also sparked some ideas and a different awareness around the opportunities that digital technology has for your business, and that platforms such as NetFlorist and Mr. D Food and others of that nature can have. I think also it shows that you don't have to do it all alone. If you're not tech savvy, you don't know how it works, jump on the wagon that's already moving. That's also a great way to move along into your space of digital business. Just in closing, we have some upcoming sessions in July on this webinar series. Firstly, next week, we'll be looking at cloud-based solutions for SMEs with Amazon. And then the week thereafter, we're looking at online and contactless payment systems with SnapScan. So please keep that in your diaries, and hopefully you can join us for that. And then lastly, you can visit our website. You'll see the link on the top of your screen to view any of our past webinars, which, as I said before, are recorded and which can be viewed from our Digital Economy Go Digital webinar website. And yes, that from our side and from my side, from the department and from the Digital Economy team, thank you very much again for joining us today. Thank you for your time. Thanks for your interest. We hope that this was a positive experience for you, and we trust that you will stay well, stay healthy, and that you will go digital. So from me and the team at the Digital Economy Unit, thank you. Bye-bye for now, and see you next time.